G20 nations are discussing a range of issues dealing with anti-corruption measures that all their countries face. You know, corruption is not just a South African issue, it's a global issue. And these countries are all here where they will be sharing information and discussing and hopefully come up with resolutions, tangible resolutions, which we all can take forward within our various governments. But I am now going to be speaking to the co-chairperson of this meeting, who was the chairperson last year, Mr. Marcelo Pontes Viana, Secretary for Private Sector Integrity of Brazil. So thank you so much for your time today. First of all, what has your experience been thus far?
So first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really feel very happy to be here in South Africa. It's the first time that the G20 meetings is being held in the Africa country. So it's quite an experience being here. So last year was a very fruitful discussions during the group. Of course, we have countries here with different backgrounds, with different perspectives. And one of the biggest challenge is that we converge all those different views in a consensus decided document and deliverables that will going to be made by the group. One of the other challenges that we have is that those discussions convert in real concrete measures that afterwards the countries are going to be committed to implement in their own home countries.
So that's actually something I wanted to touch on, because South Africans often complain about government having talk shops. They spend money on these conferences, on these workshops, and then nothing actually comes out of it. But this is a guarantee. Is there a guarantee that can be made to all G20 nations that in fact these resolutions are going to be implemented at some point?
Definitely. I think one of the biggest difference of this group from others that we see in comparison is that there is a commitment of the biggest economies in the world that will come here, discuss very important topics, and afterwards will follow up and make sure that every country is seeking to implement what was discussed and approved here. For instance, this year South Africa president has chosen two very important topics that relate to fighting corruption. The first one is how we manage to recover better assets that were stolen and manage these stolen assets once they are recovered. That's a very challenging task, not only for South Africa, but every single country here. And the other one is how we protect better whistleblowers who are willing to come up and provide good information for better investigations and better sanction people who has committed illicits. All those discussions, they are challenging for every single country here. We want to come by the end of this year with practical solutions that will change how we fight corruption in our own countries. So we are really committed to implement what we are going to be approving here.
Let me just take you back a little bit to the asset recovery, because I know our Public Service and Administration Minister specifically mentioned that in his keynote address, where he spoke about we always just equate corruption in financial terms. We don't equate to how it actually, in South Africa, affects us on the ground in terms of service delivery, because money that should be going into our national fiscus for water and various things that the citizens need, it's going to corruption. And he spoke about recovering all of that. The recovery of these assets in your country, for instance, is that also something that you struggle with?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that's true not just for Brazil and South Africa. Every single country struggles with that. Unfortunately, corruption takes action in different forms. And each time more we see there is more complexity of how these actions are done. Sometimes people try to avoid being confiscated their assets by moving them abroad. So we need to make sure that we have international cooperation, international partnerships. As you said, that's one of our main goals, because what corruption does is to divert the funds for people who really need it to people who are making illicit actions. So we, at the same time that corrupted people are trying to avoid how we can find them, we are trying here to make sure that we have the proper tools to make this money come back to the public funds.
Mr. Pontis-Piana, thank you so much for your time. Well, there you have it. One of the reasons for we having this meeting as well, that the G20 countries are meeting, of course, is also to discuss international cooperations and partnerships, because as he spoke about following the money, and countries here can learn from each other. And, you know, there are times when the money goes abroad, so countries need to have that cooperation so that the money can be followed and tracked and hopefully directed and invested back where it needs to go, and that is to the people of the country.